you have there, Mike?
Yeah, how about that, huh? I finally figured out virtual backgrounds. This is a breakthrough in technology.
Is that, yeah? I haven't figured that out yet.
It's a rabbit hole. It may not be worth going down, Barry.
Okay. So Kathy, it looks like we have a quorum. Is that correct?
Give me just a sec. Yes, I'll go ahead and start the recording if that's all right with you.
Yeah, please do.
This meeting is being recorded.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for being here. I'd like to call to order the Homeless Strategies Workgroup meeting for Friday, December 4th, 2020. It's 1:31 p.m. and we are meeting virtually. First item is call the roll, please.
Barry Buchanan.
Here.
Tyler Schroeder.
Here.
Carol Frazee. Michael Lilliquist.
Here.
Councilmember Hannah Stone.
Here.
Mayor Seth Fleetwood.
Here.
Riley Sweeney indicated he wouldn't be able to attend today. Michael Shepard.
Here.
Hans Erkinger Davis.
Here.
Mike Parker.
Here.
Nick Lewis. Ann Beck.
Here.
Karen Burke indicated she wouldn't be able to attend today. Jen Daly for Dean White.
Here.
Flo Simon. Under Sheriff Chadwick. Mike Hilly. Guy Ochogrosso. Marcus Stidham.
Here.
Joel Kennedy.
I'm here.
Emily O'Connor.
Here.
Michael Barris indicated he wouldn't be able to attend today. Lisa Marks.
Here.
And that's everyone.
Thank you. Okay, next item is the meeting summary for November 20th. Can we get a motion to approve?
I will motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, it's moved and seconded. Any corrections to those meeting summaries? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That passes. Let's dive into discussion and planning for Pallet Shelters. Deputy Executive Schroeder sent some comparison data around. So Tyler, do you want to help us understand that?
Sure, Tyler Schroeder, Deputy Executive. Over the last week or two, I forget when the last Homeless Strategies Workgroup meeting was, we've been doing more research on pallet shelters, as well as another local option. And Kathy Halka, I think, sent out the document. It was just a brief document comparing the two. Kathy, I don't know if you want to share that document and I could walk through it, or I could share my screen.
It's up to you. I can share it if you'd like.
That sounds good.
Okay, just a second.
So, as we've been talking at the last work group, the county executive has had an interest in following the council's request to move forward and purchase some shelters. Really, I think the county has kind of taken the lead on what type of shelter would be appropriate. and where to go with that. And then the city has taken the lead on finding some sites or a site location for it. So I'll let the city kind of walk through that. But first off, I think we've seen kind of two different options, local options. First is the Pallet Shelter, which is a company out of Everett. They do 8x8 through, I think, 8x12. A little bit more, I guess I would say, FEMA emergency preparedness shelters, and it's on the left side. 360 Modular is a new company out of Ferndale that is doing what I would term, and I think people on this call will correct me, as a little bit more of a tiny home. It has a little bit more residential construction to it, insulation, and can be developed in the same size, 8x8 through 8x12. So a comparison of these two, kind of from a structural characteristic, the Pallet Shelter is an aluminum frame. It has a fiberglass coated composite walls, some minimal insulation, and from our thought would have some high winter heating cost. They both have a small electrical heating component in the walls to them. 4 small windows on the top, and one positive to Pallet Shelter is they could be broken down and then reassembled if you need to move them or for storage purposes. 360 Modular, as you can see, that's a prototype there on the right. As you can see, it's steel framed for kind of a harder term construction. And then there's more, the characteristics are more residential in nature. It has a 2x4 construction, doors and walls, wood panels, R13, R19 insulation. Because of the insulation, it probably would have an overall lower heating cost and lower electrical load. At this time, it would have one 3x3 window, LP siding. It is much more of a fixed structure, so it can't be broken down because of the steel components to it. Although it is a forklift or crane ready, so on the bottom are some forklift components that could get right in, and they're light enough where you can move them on a site or be able to move them through. So just some interior components and amenities, power supply to both, electric space heater to both, electrical outlets. 360 Modular had some USB charging ports. Again, Pallet was a foldable metal. 360 Modular is more of a wood frame, and for the bed options, Pallet would have probably a little bit nicer of a mattress at this point. 360 Modular, right at this point, has foam sleeping pads, but I'm sure that can be changed as well. Easy to clean and sanitize material for the Pallet, as well as for 360 Modular. The insides are a vinyl coated wall, I believe, for both. Smoke detectors and the other safety precautions, and lights. There's an outdoor LED light, motion censored, and then an indoor LED light as well. We've talked a little bit about delivery schedule. You know, Pallet Shelter originally had some available within 2 weeks. The last time we checked, it was kind of dependent on the order, and that would be probably more like 4 weeks or so. For Modular, 360 Modular, they can develop about 10 of these units per week after a 1-week production ramp up. So I think both of the options would be about by the end of the year for about the 25 units that the housing work group kind of thought would be about the right amount for this first step. Price is similar in the 8x8 components, $7,500 per unit approximately. And each one has an option to go 8x8 through 8x12. And then lastly, there were just a couple of other options that had been looked at or at least analyzed. Northwest Recycling has 8x20 job shack containers that you could rent by the month or that you could purchase. They're a little bit larger. The 8x20 is probably a little bit too large, so you'd have to retrofit the inside to provide some separation and have multiple people in there. And then there was also just a Connect shelter option, just so that we were looking at the other options. But the county administration has looked into them. We at this time, I would say, favor the 360 modular. We were able to do a site inspection. I know that Whatcom County Facilities and City of Bellingham building official and electrical have done some research on it and have been coordinating with them about what that would look like for connection. But I just wanted to follow up with the housing work group here because there was some conversation at the last meeting, and just give some more details to see if there was one over the other that may be recommended by this group.
Okay, thanks, Tyler. Questions? Councilmember Lillquist.
So thanks to the county for doing this legwork. I do prefer the 360 modular, but you know more details than I do. That's my feedback. I do know there was a question about the how purchases can be made properly following state purchasing and other guidelines on purchasing and a bidding process. You now have several options. Can the county proceed with regular purchasing techniques to put out a relatively short order bid and purchase by year end? Or do you still need an emergency declaration of sorts to complete a purchase, regardless of which option you go with?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And actually, I was working with facilities earlier today to go out and find a third option. And that's really just to accomplish kind of some of that competitive bid processes. But that would only allow us to purchase up to $40,000. And which in the one scenario would get 4 or 5 units maybe. So it may be a good first step. And so we're going to be considering that a little bit. Utilizing the emergency, we still have to finalize some of the work on the site and where they would go before we could make that component, but we are coordinating still with the city administration on that. And that would be an option to move forward.
Other questions?
So
Hans.
if I'm just curious, depending on the use, if it was for transitional use or no barrier use, are there ones that are better for, say, if meth was being smoked in there and need to be detoxified versus maybe seniors that are a longer term kind of placement?
It's a good question. The conversations that I had with those that know construction a little bit better than I, the 360 modular, because it's that residential construction and then a vinyl coated wall, the interior coated walls could be removed and then replaced if need be. And it's a little bit easier to clean through. I believe, and I'd have to double check, but I believe the pallet structure, from the first photo, it's just one wall. It's just one aluminum wall. So the outside of the wall and the inside of the wall is the same. So you'd have to replace that whole panel if there was stuff going on inside. So as we looked at it, to answer your question, Hans, we think that 360 modular would be a little bit of a easier ongoing maintenance to them to keep the structure in place, do cleaning, or then replace the interior wall if you needed to.
Mike Parker.
Hans asked 90% of my question. My other one was another pest that can be problematic is bed bugs. And I noticed that one had wood beds and another has metal beds. So I'm not an expert in this category in any way whatsoever. Just know that from what I've heard, metal beds can be a little bit more resistant to those critters. But that's just a one piece of feedback. And I guess a follow-up question, would 360 Modular consider furnishing a metal bed?
yeah, it's a good component we're still working through. And so that insight is really valuable. So we'll continue to think through that. And I think from the mattress standpoint, we would kind of probably work with the health department. We've done some purchasing of mattresses recently to make sure that the mattresses that are purchased are resistant to that. I hadn't thought about the actual hardened bed structure, but we'll do a little bit of research. And again, those are installed after the construction is there. So, you know, we could spec out metal beds. They could use the steel that we could spec out metal beds instead of wood beds if we needed to. So I'll put that on the list for the next kind of research associated with it.
Emily and then Marcus.
Just a couple of questions, Tyler. One would be a follow-up, though, to Hans' question about meth, or maybe a suggestion to look into that a little bit further, because surfaces that can be cleaned versus permeable surfaces that have to be replaced when they hit a certain meth threshold would be worth finding out. If the metal pallet shelters are actually cleanable with meth contamination, that would be worth us knowing, versus the 360 if it actually would have, if it's permeable and the whole inside would have to be replaced. And your health department staff has been super helpful to us at Lydia Place in answering some of those questions, but it's a great point, and I think it's actually worth digging into a little bit further. My other question was whether or not either of these could accommodate couples who want to stay together, because that's certainly something that we come up against a lot. And if there's one or the other, or if we can make sure that we're thinking about that when we look at what to purchase and what the uses could be. And then my last is just a comment, which is that it seems like there might be a really good use for having both of these kinds of structures available to us as a community. One as like a, you know, more permanent sheltering option in a tiny home, cottage home type arrangement, but then others that can actually be taken down and set up during emergency shelter, severe weather, or other emergencies, as I know was discussed in the council, et cetera. So just sort of a comment out there that maybe it's not an either or, but a both. Thanks.
Yeah, good. And then the options, the one question that you had there, Emily, the options, they both come between 8 by 12. So 8 to 8 to 8 by 12. So I would think if couples were to utilize them, the question would be, is 8 by 12 big enough for that purpose?
Yeah, and I know one listed like bunk beds as an option, and I don't know if the 360, if that's an option, but it seems like it would be good to be able to fold that into some of our availability.
Great.
Marcus.
Yeah, I can offer a little bit maybe on it too. As a builder, I've been exposed to I've been around some of the remediation for meth houses and stuff. And when you have a wooden structure in standard insulation and stuff, usually badly enough, you'd have to take the interior walls out and take it down to the studs, take the insulation out, and prime the studs with a PVA primer, a high grade primer, and then redo it from that way. And I haven't toured that facility or seen the construction techniques. And I like the idea of the 360 shelter as well. It's a better, stronger, ideally. But it also depends. And while we're talking about construction styles for potential meth exposure, maybe perhaps we should look at the possibility of the pellet shelter as being perhaps more washable. There is no organic materials in it, and so it may just be something that you can treat, pull, even if you have to pull the inside panel off. But it's all FRP, which is the fiberglass resin panel, which may be the same vinyl product that perhaps it's not vinyl, but maybe that's what Mr. Schroeder is thinking about as well. My only other thought on this is it also kind of comes into what our plans are to use the shelters, like Emily alluded to some extent. If they're not going to move around much, then I'm all in favor of a more sturdy structure. Also, we need to look into the meth or other contamination things. But if it's going to be something that's going to be moved around, then we really should maybe look at the cost effectiveness of the pallet shelters in that. It's really expensive to do. I know that we had a builder who was volunteering their machinery and everything to move us at Unity Village when we were getting ready to do that, to go to the Clean Green site. And that was a very expensive prospect, but they were donating it. So I just want to make sure that'll be a lot more expensive probably to move them around a lot to use the bigger shelters. But if they're going to stay in one place for a while and be available for this type of sheltering, maybe they're the better idea. I won't take more time.
Michael Shepard.
Tyler, could you just clarify that $40,000 expenditure? So are we just able to purchase 4 or 5 of these units, or is that just the emergency part of the funding and we can access more funds for additional?
Yeah, so we can purchase more than 4 or 5. It's just the process that has to go through. So what I was trying to get at is if we could purchase about 5 of them up to $40,000 as soon as I have a third quote, and I'm getting the third quote. As soon as we have determined where the site is and who the operator is, which is the work that we're doing with the city of Bellingham, we've recognized that the county could purchase more than that through the emergency process. And so as soon as that has been accomplished, we could take that step if we as a community did think that 15 or 20 was needed.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Yep.
Marcus.
It's kind of a broad subject. The whole pallet shelter thing is being dealt with on many levels right now. We're definitely negotiating with the city on that as well. And so one of the things that is coming up is the real desire for number one, more than just the original 50 that were thought. Probably, I mean, there's easily 100 people on the lawn right now at City Hall. And it's probably fair to say that any purchase of less than 150 is failing when the weather turns and the people come out of the woods. All that said, the larger area that has been being considered and volleyed back and forth between the partners on the field down there and the city is the Clean Green site as a possibility, with ideally some input from even some infrastructure help from the county. I also, though, while we have Mike Shepard on the line, would also like to remember that maybe Mike had some property, a large piece of property, that the idea is that we could put together a 4-square with 25, 25, 25, 25, and a central building in the middle, be that a temporary building or whatever, where all your services would be, so that a corner of the building would be in each village, and that would be 100 and a 4-square. That allows one group to administer very easily to 100 people, because it doesn't take a lot to maintain the village once it's up and running. And it's more about like dividing your forces. Okay, now I got to drive across town to go be a social worker over there and like that. So it's something that we're really trying to look at that possibility of a larger site. And I'd love Michael's input on that, or anybody else's input on a larger site that could work that, and to prepare our heads to get more shelters than the original 50 that we were originally talking about. Thanks.
Well, that's a good segue into the next piece of this that I wanted to give the city an opportunity to give an update on their work as far as the tiny home project. Is there somebody from the city that can give us a quick update?
Sure.
Mr. Suppler.
If the mayor wishes to, or I can certainly follow up.
You're welcome to, Rick. Go for it.
Okay. At present, as we understand it, there's a need for urgency, and the city looked at its available sites. One of the sites that we have in inventory that can quickly be converted is the parking lot behind City Hall. Have to acknowledge that it has its State Environmental Policy Act work already done, its shoreline exemption already done, and a suite of conditions that were already prepared for that site. So if one is looking for getting a site up as quickly as possible, that's the best candidate we have to date. We anticipate we can accommodate about 20 to 25 of the tiny houses at the site.
Okay, thanks, Rick. That's how close are we to that becoming a reality as far as like turnkey?
One of the challenges is the easy part might be finding a site and finding the tiny houses. The challenge might be to find an operator who can provide the 24/7 services needed for a population that may not be screened upon entry.
Is that a part of the RFP or RFQ that you guys have out right now, or is that for the longer term thing that Seth, you were talking about 2 weeks ago?
Yeah, that's separate and distinct. That's the effort to create a longer term encampment potential that presently I understand could be up to 2 years. And that's something that won't be operational until at the soonest the springtime. We're talking the new managed site that the city is making available is from the sooner period through this winter.
Are we actively looking for an operator for that emergent site behind City Hall?
Very much so. We've been in multiple meetings in every week. We're actively engaged in communications with potentially a couple of groups that might be able to serve as the operator.
Okay. Any questions for the city side siting and Marcus?
Yeah, as long as it's great to have you both here. I'm curious, maybe Rick can answer how far along we were in the process with the Clean Green site when, because Homes Now was really on its way there, and then the COVID struck and we fell back into Fairhaven on that one. But it seemed like we were pretty far along with all of the studies for that site as well, and so that it should be fairly vetted as well. I mean, we're just a power drop away and maybe getting some septic in there from my perspective. Am I wrong?
Unfortunately, that application was withdrawn. It would have to be resubmitted. We require at least 14 days notice. We require a neighborhood meeting. We would have to do SEPA review. That takes at least 3 weeks. And then we'd have to promulgate a decision. That decision has a 14-day comment period. At the end of the period, if it's appealed, it could delay moving forward. So a full process would await it. However, you are correct. There was an application prepared that had all of the information for the site. And that would save time if you started that process.
Okay, but under an emergency measure, I mean, what makes that we would not have to go through the same process for Winter Haven?
Emergencies are different, but emergencies are limited duration, and that could be considered. However, we're looking for something that is more quickly available. It's about a $30,000 power drop to facilitate using Clean Green. We discovered that when we were looking at the site previously. I don't think that work's ever been performed.
Well, I don't mean to take up too much time, kids, but in fact, it's something that's been volleyed around quite a bit. And it's something that I had some extensive conversation over a year ago with Sat Paul on the idea of the county and the city going together on infrastructure at Clean Green. And he seemed at the time that was a really good idea in his mind and something that he would embrace and try to get county funds for if there was a push for that. I think this is a great time to push for that. I see this as an emergent need. I see it, as I spoke earlier, the idea of a larger site where you can allow people to, several operators even to operate on a site that size. We should really be looking at that site as a possibility of a solution to the future from my perspective. I think that the emergency dollars we have right now will give us a chance to grip onto even maybe more shelter dollars that we will own later. And then as we budget, hopefully we're not completely tied down to our budgets on both county and city, but maybe we should be budgeting for the social workers for the plan for this thing that is happening. And I just, if we're tied to our budget right now, I ask everybody to pause and because this is happening, and you're going to own these shelters, so you won't have to fund hotel vouchers and leases on large buildings and all of that. I mean, maybe there's going to be these will be part of your solutions as well. But this is something that's happening. We have this available to us. I think that we should try to own as many of these shelters as we feasibly can, and then try to budget for social workers to help the citizenry have access, lowering the barriers for citizenry to have access and give aid to these people by having some qualified people around to help guide that. That's a really good plan from my perspective, and that's what I'm trying to work out through this emergency. So I'm hoping that you guys are with me.
Michael Lilliquist.
Thanks, Barry. I think we have to be careful, because if we're not careful, we'll end up competing with ourselves. And what I mean by that is Yeah, we have emergency needs for severe weather shelters, but we also have maybe a place for transitional housing or tiny encampments, but those tiny encampments can never be permanent. They're not permitted or permissible as permanent dwellings. So when it comes to clean green, I'd rather see affordable housing there, permanent affordable housing, sort of like the new Samish Commons, I think it's called, the Housing Authorities project. So, I mean, I don't want us to get locked into a situation where we put a temporary use where a permanent one might be possible. I also think that we could maybe do both. For example, we could consider a location that might be appropriate for a 1 year's use as a emergency shelter, but the next year would be used for a different housing purpose. One of the difficulties with this whole work group is we tend to bounce around. We get a little bit frustrated with just talking about Band-Aids and shelters because we really want to talk about ending homelessness, which really talks about moving people into, affordable and appropriate and stable housing. And we get in a tension with ourselves. I don't know, a Clean Green, I think of as a really good long-term location. And so I want to make sure that we have significant parcels like that. We make sure to not preclude those longer-term solutions also. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions on the tiny home side of things? Okay, we'll move on to the
If I may quickly, Barry, I just want to kind of respond to that, what Michael said. And I think that we're in an emergent need. The people that are on the lawn at City Hall are citizens, are people that I've been tending, and I consider them my clients for years now. I'm happy to see them get shoes on their feet. I'm happy to see them get a tent over their head. I'm happy to see them get a little roundness in their bellies instead of a caved in belly. These are the people that we're still going to have to deal with. Let's get them stabilized and if that is at Clean Green, then so be it. Let's get the site prep going for the next project. Let's make a plan. But there's going to be a need to take care of these people, and we've got to address that now. And I'm really happy that we're engaging that on the city level largely, and I'm hoping that everybody gets on the same page. Holistically, I think we can do this. I think we can do it with the monies even available. I think we can let the air out of some of the bloated budgets and really sharpen up. These tiny homes are cheap. These villages are cheap to run, especially if you allow an organization to tend more people in a larger site where we can have good spacing and everything, community. Thanks.
So moving on to the new strategies matrix, and the first idea is to talk about is the subcommittee, proposed subcommittee groups and leaders. So Emily, do you have something for us to consider?
Yeah, I think I just want to remind folks that we now do have this subcommittee structure, and if you were designated as a chair or are on a committee that doesn't have a designated chair, to maybe consider stepping into that role even temporarily, just to call a group together. The task at hand from our last meeting was to try and pull together a group, your subcommittee relatively soon, take a look at the matrix and see how your subcommittee can help meet some of the priorities and goals of the matrix. So that's the task to the subcommittees. And then to come back to this group with either questions or resources that you might need in order to carry that out, or suggestions for action items for this larger group. Because we'd like to start thinking about what can we accomplish through the course of the year so that we're moving the needle on each of these segments, while making sure that we're balancing, as Michael was talking about, those long-term strategies, right? We don't want to be just flip-flopping between what progress we're making. We want to be making progress comprehensively. And so our charge is really within those areas that we have subcommittees around. And if you need any support, or if you have any questions, if you are a committee chair or what I'm saying isn't clear, this is a great time, a couple questions, so that we can get those committees starting to have some dialogue with, again, like, let's bring back action items to this group that we can move forward to city council, to county council, to our executive offices, so that we can see that action translated into additional services to meet needs in the community.
Okay, thanks, Emily. Questions or comments on Joel?
Yeah, thank you, Emily, for continuing to work on that. Just had a question. So chair or proposed chairs, are they going to receive like a finalized list and contact information for those in order to move forward?
Yeah, yeah. Everybody's contact information is on the website, emails. But Kathy can help if you have a question about contact information. Kathy can get that for you. And the roster, you should all have the roster. I'll resend the roster to Kathy. I think there was one addition.
Okay. Last time
that,
I noticed that not everybody had been assigned or had volunteered for positions, and not everybody.
That is correct. Not everybody, is able to serve on a committee. That's okay. We want people who can show up and participate in that space. So it can be a little bit of a fluid process. Just a reminder too that these committees are able to bring in outside support. So if you have other people in the community or community partners that you want to hear from or partner with or ask questions of, that's part of the benefit of the committee structure, is to get voices into this mix that we don't necessarily have on the screen with us today. And so that's a possibility as well. So if you have questions about contact information, I'm happy to help to the extent that I can, and about contact information as it relates to this group, Kathy can assist with that as well.
Lisa, you're muted.
There we go. That was a question that I was going to have too, was just kind of like what our parameters are, like inside of our subcommittees, what we're allowed to do, what we're not allowed to do, bringing in other voices and things like that. Another question that had come up when we met last week, our smaller committee, was is there a possibility of getting a list of resources? Because it's a lot easier to do this work in the subcommittees if we know what resources we have to work with. So, like land that might be available, if we wanted to go out and check it out, maybe brainstorm on some possibilities that we could bring to the group that could maybe be done with those areas, or all of the different community partners that we're working with, who's doing what, so that we could figure out connecting the dots a little bit better, and who could partner together to do the most work, and things like that. That was one of the things that came up in our last little subcommittee meeting, that we were hoping to bring to the larger group, to see if a list like that exists, or if something like that could be made where we know what our resources are that we're working with.
That's a great question, Lisa. I think, Barry, if I could just chime in, that one of the benefits of the small groups is that you can invite community partners in to help you get up to speed if there's an area or a resource that you're not particularly familiar with. And so please feel free to invite community partners in to that, or to lean on. We've got representation from our service sector for every one of those populations here in this group. And I think folks are on subcommittees with which they have some expertise. So please lean on the people in your subcommittee who have some of that experience, and then feel free to invite others in. I don't think we have a list of like, here's resources that aren't being utilized, but if subcommittees have ideas about potential resources, I think those are part of the conversation that we hope our subcommittees can have and bring back to the larger group. And then I don't know, Barry, or if others have ideas about some hanging resources out there that could use creative energy.
So the kind of the second piece, we're kind of diving into the second piece of this agenda item. That's ideas to engage community members in developing priorities. So what's our communication strategy on how we're going to do some outreach to the general public? Joel?
Subcommittee for that.
Yeah, I was going to say that. I think that's where I chime in. I haven't gotten started, obviously, on that subcommittee, but I think that's a vital part of this. Is sort of, that's the hub, I guess, that brings all of this together. And I would like to get started on that as soon as possible. And if we can have some sort of, central, even if it's just a working document that we go and, as each of the subgroups sort of come together and, pull in information or pull in people and talk to people in the community and see what's going on. They can fill in that information. So that's something that I think that we're going to start working on as soon as we get that subcommittee going.
So we also have Jed Holmes on the line, who is the communications person for the executive's office. Jed, do you have any thoughts? Maybe he might be away from his desk. Okay. All right. Anything else on the strategies matrix? All right, let's move on to year-round sheltering with families and children. Do we have any update on that at all today? Lisa Marks.
Basically what we were going to talk about is what I just talked about. when we had met, we sort of had come to that conclusion. It's like, okay, well, what are we actually supposed to bring? What are the resources that we're working with? And it sounds like that's all being worked on. So.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'll just add, we're not trying to reinvent the wheel with these subcommittees, right? We want to be building upon existing work, and so I think that's really critical to have good communication around what those gaps are, and then what the creative ideas are for moving that forward. So I think that's just an important thing to remember for each of us in those work groups. It's not like throw everything out and start over. It's how do we build onto what we have, and we should have some updates from the Families with Children subcommittee just about sort of capacity and increased need at our next meeting, just to check in on how that's gone over the past couple of months since I brought those numbers to us.
Okay, so let's move to winter shelters. Do we have any news on that?
I don't have anything to report out on severe weather shelters. I don't have any partners at this point who are able to help.
What about, is the old drop-in site open now? That was supposed to open on December 1st with CTK. What's the status of that?
I can speak to the status of that. So that's the overflow shelter for base camp. Base camp currently has 132 people and a high water mark of 200. So it's not full yet. And so it won't be opening until base camp fills up. A number of the folks from base camp peeled off to go to the encampment at City Hall. And so they're just hanging out there. And with the COVID cases, we're not allowing those folks back in until they've been quarantined a sufficient amount of time. And so the folks that are remaining at base camp are happy that it's still laid back there right now. But it is a challenge for our community.
Michael Lillquist?
Yeah, I brought this up before. I'm wondering about base camp, since you're now instituting some COVID protections so to make sure that any people who've been exposed don't come into your facility. Will that keep down the number of overnight guests in such a way that will never hit the apparent need for overflow capacity when maybe there is a need for overflow capacity? I hope I'm making some sense. And maybe the numbers are low because you are needing to keep them low for safety's sake.
Yes, those numbers were low before, or at least the last 3 weeks since the camp at City Hall started. And they'll have to stay low for the next 2 weeks, most likely, until people are quarantined long enough to be able to come back in that aren't already staying there. So yeah, the overflow can't happen until base camp starts to fill up. And it won't fill up until quarantine is over for the folks at City Hall.
Marcus.
Yeah. Okay. I got to unpack it. I do have a problem with that because, and I've had some back and forth with Hans, so I understand their policy on that, that they've identified some people who have been at City Hall long, and those people are not allowed back in. I had a gentleman come by yesterday while I was talking to somebody. I meet with a lot of people out on the sidewalk these days. But I had a gentleman who was standing by and waiting and waiting and waiting. And he waited until I was done talking, and he came up to me, and he said, he kept his good distance. He had his mask on and everything. He said, I just came from base camp and I don't have anything, and they sent me over here. They're not letting me in. I'm newly homeless. I've not been in base camp before. I've never been here before. Can you help me? And so I'm concerned about that. I'm concerned that I'm concerned that I'm glad you're getting good spacing in base camp, but we just can't be sending every new face over to City Hall. That is triage. The group that is there are heroes. But I want to make it very clear that while I have you all on this call, I have your clients on the ground. When I say I'm just a guy who supports the campers in Bellingham like I've always done. I go into the woods for them. I go to the doorways. I pick them up off of pavement, wet pavement, and put Mylar bags around their bodies and put them back down on the pavement from time to time. It sucks. These same people are now on, and these are your clients. These are the Opportunity Council's clients. These are the Mission's clients. These are DVSAS clients. These are Northwest Youth Services clients. Outreach. Hey, you know what? I don't know what seems so unfriendly about this. These are still your clients. And the group on the ground has done nothing but ask for services and maybe a little reduction in armed police. But honestly, guys, we're in this together. We better be in this together. We have your clients on the lawn. Do you have any tents? They get ruined in the wind and rain. Think about the last month. That's what we've been going through here. I've been there every day except for 2. Today's my second day off. Come down.
I can speak to that. Our outreach that goes out in the streets, it appears, at least from our outreach that goes out on the streets, that most people are staying at the City Hall encampment. There are very few people that we normally would see that are camping out in doorways of businesses or in various places. And so pretty much anybody, not anybody, but most people that we encounter trying to get into base camp have had an interface with the City Hall encampment out there. And so we're not letting any of those folks in unless we are working with them. If they've, and some of them have done this where they've moved away from the City Hall camp. They've let us know this. They've said after 2 weeks, can we come back? Absolutely. We're happy to work with you that way. But until the potential outbreak is done at the City Hall camp, we can't let anyone in. Now we are working with people that are coming out of jail, any sort of referrals, people coming in from places that are COVID-free. Those folks can access, and they're not being denied access.
A freshly newly homeless person can't come take shelter with you?
Not unless we have confirmation that they haven't been a part of the City Hall camp.
But if one of these people tells you, I've been away from City Hall for 2 weeks, I haven't gotten any aid from anybody else for 2 weeks, you're going to let them in, and you're going to believe that. I'm sorry, guys. And these are we are the sheltering agents in town right now. The people who are valiantly trying to do triage on the City Hall lawn without services, and a service provider who's closing his doors.
Mike Parker.
Thanks, Barry. I just wanted to offer, this is a little bit off topic, but on topic. I had a call with an advocate earlier who pointed out that a number that was used last year that anybody in the community could call, and it would have a recorded message telling where shelter was available. They mentioned to me that that was not on the health department website. And so I've talked to the health department, actually had a good conversation briefly with Ann Beck. So I think we're going to get that back up there. But I wanted to make sure that it got on public record, that phone number, and that it is operational, and it will direct people to go to the mission, as that is the only currently 24/7 operating shelter that you don't need a referral to go to. And just to get that on the record, I'm going to go ahead and give out that number. I got this from Terry Bryant, who's the director of the Whatcom Homeless Service Center. That telephone number is 360-788-7983. And again, what that will do is anybody that comes, we're going to make sure that information is posted, by the way, so people can find it. But that number can be used. And currently, there's no cold weather shelter, as we heard from Ann at the health department. but it will give them information about the Lighthouse mission. And should there be winter shelters, of course, Opportunity Council is happy to update that. So I just wanted to bring that to everybody's attention. Thanks, Barry.
Michael Shepard.
Yeah, Hans, just to follow up on numbers at base camp. So if and when the city hall encampment is no longer in use, could the base camp accept all the people who are there to your best estimates of the numbers? Or at that point, would we be triggering the overflow needed at the original Holly Street location? And would that still have enough capacity to manage all those individuals?
Great question. So if we were at 132 last night, that leaves us with 68 beds, plus an additional 39 beds that would open up at the old drop-in center facility. So that's, close to 120 beds. Or no, not 120. That would be close to, what is that? Who can do math for me here?
There are hundreds of people who are living in the woods right now who won't leave their stuff behind until it gets cold. You'll see them. That's the math.
So in terms of the folks, though, that are on the City Hall lawn, not all of them could come in, most likely, just because a number of them might be on restriction due to violence or different things like that. But like I said, and I've always said, there's always pathways back, and sometimes it requires a safety plan. The reality is a lot of folks don't want to have the structure that the mission offers. They want to have their own sort of space to do what they wish and come and go as they please and that kind of thing, which I totally understand. And not all want to be around other people so close, even though you have the 6 feet distancing. And so a number of those folks would want to come in regardless. And so would it meet the need is probably the deeper question. I think it would meet the need of people that could accept this type of sheltering service. But will it meet that need in the years to come? That I don't think so. I think there is a greater need for sure. And there's certainly folks that City Hall lawn, and Marcus could probably speak better to this, that would like to have kind of their own space to do what they would like to do. And there's a number of folks too that, and these are the folks that peeled off of base camp initially, are the folks that don't like the accountability we offer. And they're more the folks that are wrestle with chronic drug abuse and whatnot. And since that isn't monitored as closely, to my understanding, I could be wrong, that at the City Hall location, then you have a lot of people peel off. If the City Hall location wasn't there and the need was such that it was cold enough, they'd still come in and they would abide by the rules. That's just my general sense.
I'd like an opportunity to at least correct the general record. No, the general record for everyone to understand, Barry, is that these are the people as they came to us.
Marcus, please wait until you're called on. Joel, there was somebody with a hand up before you.
Yeah, I just had a question about the quarantine period, since the CDC has reduced their quarantine from 14 to 7 to 10 days. Has there been any discussion on lowering that requirement?
Okay, Marcus, go. You're muted.
I know. I'm sorry for stepping out of line. I just want to make sure we're clear. There's been a lot of miscommunication about what the camp is out there. These are the people that came and found shelter together. Some of them have been watching our city and county councils in action. They're, surprise, surprise, they're aware citizens who do not have houses. They moved in on City Hall lawn because they wanted to be recognized. They wanted to be safety in numbers. They wanted to not get swept anymore. They were looking for help. And I found out about them the next day, and I went and I started to help them, and I'm glad I did. But that's all that's happening out there is triage help. These are the people in the shape that they're in. They've been allowed to be like this on our streets, in our doorways, and pooping in people's yards, and this is who they are. When the mission vans roll down Holly Street, you bet it's empty. You know why? Yes, they are there. That's them. That's them. But the mission van rolls right past this site. Okay, so again, we have your people here. All of you, we have your people here. We're trying to establish who people's caseworkers are and everything. This is triage. Please come and engage. Do it safely. use your COVID protection, but this is an all hands on deck. This is it. This is them. This is us responding. And what you're seeing is a bunch of kids out there. Yeah, largely a bunch of them are defunders. Shoot them in the head for that, really? Many of them have become social workers and they're doing your jobs. If there's people out there that need to be hooked back up with their meds that some of you are holding, some of them need some of their belongings that some of you are holding. I'm not putting it to anybody right now. This is reality. We need to do this together. Please step up and come to a solution with us. The city is working great in negotiations on this. We're trying to come up with a holistic answer so that we can actually deal with this population that most of the people, to answer your question, Michael, are unable or unwilling to take shelter at the base camp, not because of 80% of them want to get one of these tiny homes. I guarantee it. And that those numbers just don't jive. So this is reality. And those have been the same people. I've been dealing with some of these people for like 3 years. And some of them have gotten worse. And that's sad, but some of them are getting better right now. Help them out. Thanks. Thank you.
Yeah, Marcus, I hear your passion. And clearly, something we all can agree on is we all want to help the folks who are unsheltered. But I have to caution you, I think it's unfair for you to characterize the people who are on this conversation as not caring about this issue. That's just not fair. These folks,
I didn't say that.
Let me finish. We listen to you, you listen to me. These folks have devoted their professional lives to helping our community. Now, they may not be doing it in the manner you're advocating for, but they are meeting it in other means too. And I think it's appropriate for you to give them some deference. There are hard choices to make. You yourself said that, and we all agree.
I'm not saying any of that though.
Please don't assign motive to folks and tell them they don't care. Tell them they're not working to a solution.
I didn't.
We can play the tape.
I did not tell anyone they don't care.
Okay.
You all have my respect for doing what you're doing, but I'm asking you to do more right now. We have your clients on the lawn. That's all. How is that disrespectful?
Hans.
To speak to a little bit of that, I feel like there was I won't speak to that. I was back to Joel Kennedy. You'd mentioned the 7 to 10 days as a possibility. 7 days with a negative COVID test, 10 days from the point of no more symptoms. And yes, we're talking about that. So that 2 weeks might be reduced.
Okay, anything else on the winter sheltering, Ann?
It's not so much on winter sheltering. I just wanted to give the health department update on the current status. I know Marcus spoke earlier with Erica with the health department. There have been 2 identified additional cases connected to Camp 210, and both of them are now at the isolation and quarantine facility. They're going to be interviewed by our contact investigation team, case contact investigators, to identify other close contacts, and then we'll follow up with those close contacts through our usual processes. And that we have talked with the folks at 210 to strongly urge the organizers or the folks there to use the library lawn as a dedicated quarantine site for any people who are identified as close contacts but don't have symptoms. And we do have a team dedicated to responding to the situation, and we're working with organizers of Camp 210, and we will provide more details as they become available.
Okay, thank you. Hans, go ahead.
And just out of curiosity, at what point does that become considered an outbreak and the health department shut down something like that?
Oh shoot! You asked me the operation. As far as the shutting down of that, that's not something we're looking at right now. We continue to evaluate the health and welfare of campers at Camp 210, and at this time, we're not recommending that the camp disperse. However, as we learn more about the situation, that could become necessary.
Anything else? Michael Lillquist.
I'd like to offer kind of a cautionary statement. I think one of the concerns is that people will see the outbreak amongst people who are homeless as somehow unusual, unexpected, or an indictment. Truth is, COVID is affecting everybody, everywhere across this entire country and county. The members of our community who are homeless they're going to get it just like those of us who are in our homes might get it. So right now we've actually kept the infection rate, I think, below expectations in the homeless population. And I think we can probably keep it below expectations. We've done a good job, and the response for the people who are at the encampment who were exposed or had symptoms is the same response the health department has for anyone who lived in a nice home somewhere. You'd be contact tracing, you'd be requiring isolation of people who are exposed. They're being treated the same way for the same reasons, because everything's identical in terms of this health risk and the best things to do about it. That was one of the things that I was really pleased that the county stepped up, 6-8 months ago, to secure the Byron Street facility for people who didn't have a place to isolate. We have that. So I want us to kind of understand and present the information to the community that actually the COVID rate in our people who don't have a shelter of their own is still very low, and let's keep it that way.
Okay, we're going to move to public comment, but I do have one kind of piece of housekeeping scheduling thing to talk about. Our next meeting is on the 18th, but the one after that would be scheduled for January 1st. So we're not going to do that. We will meet on January 8th instead of the 1st. So just so you have that in your calendars. Other than that, let's go let's open the public comment period. Kathy, do we have people with the hands raised?
Yes. First speaker will be Doug Gustafson, followed by Melissa Bird and Ada Cardona. Go ahead, Doug.
Hey, this is Doug, chairman of Homes Now, Not Later. Homes Now currently operates the only tiny home community in Bellingham, Unity Village. Homes Now is not part of the organization of Camp 210, but we have supported them in much needed supplies and donations where appropriate. I also wanted to let you guys know that Homes Now has turned in our request for qualifications, RFQ, to the city of Bellingham regarding unsheltered individuals. Homes Now hopes that the city will consider this application and come to a conclusion that Homes Now is qualified to set up future sites while maintaining the COVID protocol we already have in partnership with the city. And we have proven over the years that we are qualified to build and manage a site, and we are currently managing the only tiny home community in Bellingham. We hope that looking at this objectively, the city will come to the correct conclusion. We also hope that the city will work with multiple agencies at the same time, as Homes Now is only one group and there's many homeless individuals on the streets who need help. It wouldn't be wise to put all of the city's eggs in one basket. Homes Now is also ready to move quickly to set up a second village, whether it's at Clean Green or Safe Haven site or another viable site. Homes Now has turned in proposals for both of these sites in the past, and the paperwork is already done, including SEPA checklist. And so it would be fast to get everything online compared to other agencies. We could reapply with similar paperwork that we already have, and it would be easy. We are okay with a full process, and we'd like to do that. We'd even like to have multiple meetings with the neighborhood instead of just one. If we had to construct the homes ourselves, we expect it to take 2 to 3 months. If we are able to secure modular shelters from the city or the county, we can set up a site right away. If Homes Now is also hosted on a large enough site, we would be willing to expand to help with safe parking in the future. Homes Now also has a robust homeless outreach program. Homes Now provides regular outreach to unsheltered individuals, delivering much needed supplies, food, water, warmth, and a smile. The Homes Now homeless outreach program is fueled by donations from the overall community. Often the general public will donate items to a Homes Now village, and the village might not need the item, but we don't throw it away, we don't sell it, it goes right back on the streets to those who need it most. Often it's easier for a member of the community to know where to donate an item. They know where the village is, it's an easy drop-off point. This program saves lives and gets people to shelter every winter. Homes Now does not require and is not seeking out any direct funding from the city or the county. Homes Now is requesting city or county sites for setting up future villages. Sites would be or would need to have electricity and water at a minimum, and that might require some small costs for the city directly as a result compared to other costs they might be willing to spend. But Homes Now is not interested in taking direct government funding from the city or the county. This means that with any future sites, we can get up and running quickly without a lengthy process of acquiring money for a build or the management of a village. Residents of any tiny home community run by Homes
Time.
Now. Okay, sorry, I had more, but it's over. Bye.
Thanks, Doug.
The next speaker is Melissa Bird. Go ahead, you have 3 minutes.
Hi, everyone. My name is Melissa Bird. I'm representing some clients of Road to Home today. And then I also just wanted to make a quick announcement that we are going to have a free training online via Zoom on December 12th for those folks in the community interested in learning more about strategies to interact with people facing homelessness in our community, trauma-based care, ACEs, some social justice things to remember when you're volunteering. It'll be at 10 o'clock to 12:30. Go to our website to sign up and get the Zoom link. We'd love to see people there and continue conversations about how to support these folks. On behalf of our clients, we'd love to know who is being chosen for this winter camp if it is actually created. We have folks that are not staying on city lawn and they are staying at base camp and other places, and they want to know how they would get on a list since it doesn't seem it would be going through the normal channels. I also would like to agree with Joel that you really need to get communication pieces. I've spent the majority of my time in the last month talking about things that are going on in this community and spending a lot of time debunking some myths and miscommunication. And it's just not fair for service providers and relationships that they have with clients and the community to be spending our time doing this instead of serving our clients. Let's see, what else? Oh, can we use the overflow shelter for the folks on City Hall that aren't able to go back to the base camp? It's getting into the 30s. Our folks are cold. I know they're out on the lawn, but it doesn't mean that they don't deserve somewhere warm to stay. And if we have that resource, can't we use it? Okay. Oh, yeah, and also other resources. Can we use like Whatcom Dispute Resolution Center to get all these agencies communicating on the same page? I know that I communicate with Opportunity Council, I have a great relationship with them, that we have a great relationship with the Lighthouse Mission and base camp staff. I work with Marcus and stuff like that. I've been going down to City Hall camp and it's just not, it's not working. We're not serving the community if we're not interacting with our people. And if we can't do that because we're being accused of things, then it just can't happen. And that is not serving anybody in this community well. Thank you.
The next speaker is Ada Cardona. Go ahead, you have 3 minutes.
Hi, can y'all hear me okay?
We can hear you, yes.
Okay, great. Hi, everyone. My name is Aida Cardona. I am a resident of the York neighborhood, a community organizer, and I've recently been supporting in the efforts and negotiations with the city and working on the ground with the community at 210 Camp. I am just calling to kind of echo what both Doug and Melissa have been speaking towards, in that our housing crisis and the homelessness issue in Bellingham is not going anywhere. So if we need to put sites online immediately and work together as a coalition to be able to get more sites operational, then of course, you know, that is something that we're all interested in. I understand that each of us have our own angles and perspectives on how to approach things. And just with like any dynamic and any sort of personal relationship, you're going to find folks who jive and folks who don't jive. And so I just want to acknowledge that the barriers at certain other organizations and the certain relationship dynamics at other organizations just don't jive with people and don't make them feel safe and don't make them feel respected. And that's just kind of the nature of things. It's not about who's doing what, right? It's just a matter of getting folks the services that they need in a way that makes them feel safe and secure. And if we're able to offer that as a startup organization under the Whatcom Human Rights Task Force, then that's amazing. And I'm excited to be able to be a part of offering that. If there's ways for folks to connect with Roads to Home or Homes Now or the Overflow at Lighthouse, that's amazing too, right? The overall goal is for us to get people out of the cold this winter and into longer term transitionary and temporary housing. I wanted to speak to Joel's comment as well. I heard him talking about subcommittees in the community, and that's something that they want to start up on. And you're looking for folks to participate in that. How about going to the folks on the ground? How about going to the folks in the street and actually communicating and outreaching with our homeless community to learn what our needs are and how we can actually meet them? I'm sure that you'll hear a lot of the similar sentiments that I brought forth. And Hans, I heard you talk about your outreach, and as far as like the folks who are not being accepted at base camp, like where do you expect them to go? If there is a triage shelter that's offering warm food and services, could you expect them to not come to City Hall to get the things that they need if they're giving them without any barriers? And also, Mike Parker, it's great that there's a phone number out there, but what about folks who don't have phones? I think that just overall, we need to really take a step back to ground zero, check each of our privileges and see what it is that we're focusing on and what is actually going to be impactful and effective for our homeless community. I have more, but I'm a little hyped, so I'll yield my time.
The next speaker is Debbie. Go ahead, Debbie. You have 3 minutes. Please state your full name for the record. Go ahead, Debbie. Debbie, are you
Hello.
there? Yes, we can hear you now.
Good. I'm a volunteer with Road to Home, and I do outreach to a handful of folks that ended up at City Hall. They had been camping other places. And my concern is when the COVID case showed up this week, I had a conversation with folks at the Lighthouse, and they explained to me about the quarantine. I went back to our people at the camp, and I said it would be great if you guys could go back to where you had been and quarantine so that you could be allowed at base camp when the weather gets bad. And what they said to me, and this was 3 different people, we were told we can't leave. We were given these tents and this equipment, and we were told we cannot take them with us when we leave. And that was a little concerning to me because they don't have it. I'm glad to hear somebody mentioned maybe using the library lawn for quarantining, but I don't know where these people are supposed to quarantine. And I'm actively trying to help several of them do that. And I don't know what the options are.
Debbie, could you state your full name for the record, please?
Debbie Cantrell.
Thank you.
Follow up question? If I could just ask, I think we lost Debbie. I was just going to ask her if she found out who told her that they could not leave, but too late.
The next speaker is Amy Glacier. Go ahead, Amy. Amy, go ahead.
Yep.
You have 3 minutes.
Okay. All righty, here I go. Okay, first, Anne from Health Department. Can I ask you how many campers were tested at the base camp and how many tested positive? But I'll start with, I'm Amy Glacier, and I'm sure most of you know I'm now retired, but I was a mental health therapist for 41 years, 16 of them in your area. I became involved with the homeless population in 2016 and have worked constantly to convince the councils that 4 walls and a roof is essential to recovery and to enhance mental health. As a community, we should agree that all people should have a safe place to live regardless of their circumstances. It's better for them, businesses, emergency responders, and the community at large. I've watched councils fight tooth to stop Homes Now, but with persistence, hard work, and risk to their own lives, they've succeeded, starting with a tent camp and now have Unity Village tiny home community. This work group and the councils have ignored the people that made Unity Village successful and have been spending way too much time trying to reinvent the wheel. The model of Homes Now works. Short of contracting them immediately to develop another village, which you can do, I would implore you to buy those pallet shelters now, set them up at both Safe Haven and Winter Haven, in addition to Clean Green Site. The Clean Green Site can be split into 2 camps, one side for seniors and disabled, and the other side for other people who do want to get off the streets. Those who just want warmth and shelter, but not services, could go to Winter Haven, where there's electricity and water, and they could be receiving services there with good supervision, since it's right near the police station. We know tents won't hold up in severe weather, so buying as many pallet homes as possible is an economical way to be prepared for weather extremes in both winter and summer. It's an emergency now, and if you can make this happen now, you won't be in the same boat year after year. And since you were saving so much money not doing sweeps or buying motel rooms, you can contract some social workers to provide case management services. Hey, Hans, how do you know the 2 people from City Hall didn't go to base camp prior to arriving at City Hall? Volunteers at City Hall don't ask those questions. And because you're sending people away, there'll always be room, so there'll be no other non-religious shelters that people can go to. Have you all heard nothing from the homeless in the past few years? They either can't or won't go there. If this group cannot get councils in Stack Hall to act on alternative shelters to the mission, and after 3 years get Stack Hall to purchase pallet homes, I don't know why you guys exist. It's been 3 years and nothing has been done for emergencies until it's too late. Act, please. I yield my time.
The next speaker is Melissa Weissner. Go ahead, Melissa.
Hello, everyone. I'm back again. Zeppler, if you want us to believe that y'all care, get down there in person. We have untreated schizophrenics off of their meds. We have developmentally disabled adults. We have people kicking drugs. We have people down there that need your guys' help and services, and we are seeing no one. So you can sit there and say that you care all you want, but until we actually physically see it, we do not believe you. You sitting here and discussing homeless people without ever actually talking to them is at best insulting. We're insulted. As a fellow houseless person who happens to be living with my roommates that took me in, I don't pay rent or anything because I can't afford to. You people sitting around and talking about us without ever referencing us or discussing with us what our needs and wants and desires are, and constantly, time and time again, I hear you people speak against what you're being told directly from the people trying to amplify houseless voices. You do not know better than them just because you people have money. Get down there and help them. These people have been homeless for years. This isn't a new problem just because we put them on your doorstep. We just made it so you can't ignore them, and you're still sitting here talking about taking time and years and months. And you know what? I would kill just to have one of you spend a night out there, just one night out on the street in a tent. See how it feels. And then sit there and listen to your fellow man talk about the weeks and months and years it's going to take them to get up off their butts and do anything to put you in a shelter. This is ridiculous. These people need help and they need it now. These people need medical attention and they need it now. We need to have shelters so that we can properly quarantine people. And Hans is a liar and Debbie's a liar. I don't know who Debbie is, but everyone is allowed to take what they need and leave camp. We have never, ever told somebody they could not leave with a tent, full food in their belly, and whatever they needed to survive. So Debbie's straight up lying. I don't know who she's talking to, but that's a lie. And Hans, first of all, you have a tell. Every time you're lying, you so just so you know, if you're gonna lie, maybe don't do that. But you're literally turning everyone away and then saying you have space. It's disgusting. I yield my time.
anyone else would like to speak during the public comment period, please raise your hand virtually by clicking on the hand icon. HK Mobile, go ahead. Go ahead, Heather Katahdin. Are you there, Heather?
Hi there.
Hi, go ahead.
Heather Katahdin, speaking as a Samaritan citizen witness. Thank you, Mayor Sath. Thank you, council persons and agency staff for doing your best, focusing on the health and safety of all of our citizens. My ask, as before, is to implement safe individual shelters tonight and provide staffing to screen and provide a key to a door. Our community needs a safe quarantine shelter for citizens who've been in contact with both the base camp population and those whose only source of meal is at Lottie Street, and those who are still at large out in our community forest and fields. Thank you, citizens, to speak up, who are witness to the outdoor on-the-ground reality of our community challenges during this winter of virus pandemic challenges. I appreciate the growing support from our community to continue showing up safely in person, to provide water and sandwiches to our citizens who do not have access to a warm meal 3 times a day, who are sleeping on cardboard outside under covers of plastic and nylon. I appreciate those who are unable to safely assist in person, who donate home-cooked meals, water, supplies like batteries, hand warmers, emergency Mylar blankets, shoes, coats, hats, gloves. These are all still needed. It's obvious walking along 210 Lottie Street, there is a growing number of unsheltered citizens arriving and departing daily, and it has been obvious that no paid staff has been observed to be on site to provide leadership on the ground by either Unified Command nor by any nonprofit partner agency. It's obvious there's no lead organized, quote, encampment organizers from citizens either. What is observed is what is created when many individuals who are surviving the elements outdoors in the winter look like. When they find a location, they feel safe enough to come rest on the earth together and to help each other out. Given that the majority of camping unsheltered citizens are coping with trauma, and coping with the diversity of medical and perceptual complex disorders and diagnoses. They are there, visible right in our front lawn. I've been parked outside the library, and I can witness the library lawn is already filled with tents, many spaced 6 feet apart. Thus, there is a need for a different location to be identified with enough room to provide the 12-foot spacing as Health Department has recently recommended in this week. Health Department responding to previous citizens' requests for their recommendations weeks ago during the Veterans Day week, back when there were only 20 tent campers. Now there are more. Just today on the... Thank you so much. Please choose a quarantine area, Civic Field, Middle School, Blowdale Donovan, Depot Park, Market Square. Thank you each for doing your best.
If anyone else would like to speak, please raise your hand virtually by clicking on the hand icon. Councilmember Buchanan, we have 2 hands raised, but they've already had an opportunity to speak during the public comment session, and there are no other hands raised.
Okay, and we do only have 1 opportunity per citizen. So we'll close the public comment period. And any last words for the good of the order from Joel?
Yeah, since we have a couple minutes here, if you don't mind, I'd like to just kind of follow up the public comment with some of my own, and maybe respond to a couple of those. First of all, just wanted to give a little update on the numbers that I had presented in previous meetings, and kind of remind people that, yeah, we've got kind of a crisis going on right now, but it's just sort of at the risk of sounding like Chicken Little a little bit here. We have something even worse coming up as soon as moratoriums start to get lifted. And we don't know exactly when that's going to be. At this point, it's set for the end of the year or January. To petition the governor to extend that long enough to hopefully get some more aid from Congress so that they have their, we have other options and things and keep people off the streets. The other thing I wanted to say is just really quickly, I appreciate everybody who has the courage to come and speak and give public comment. I know it seems like we're just a bunch of sort of talking heads here, but we do actually care. Personally, I've, just to respond to Melissa, and I understand the passion and I agree with you. I've been down to that encampment. I've donated equipment, I've donated food, and I've been homeless myself. And so I do understand. I've lived in a tent before, I've lived in a vehicle before, and some of us here have. So I don't think it's quite fair to say that we don't feel that. It tends to, this medium especially tends to sort of dehumanize all of us, and so we're all coping with it the best we can. And honestly, I believe that we are doing the best we can. It does feel like things are really slow, and that's my frustration as well. But we do need to keep that in mind. So that's all. Thank you each for your comments and your courage, and we appreciate it.
Marcus and then Michael.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that I get it said for the record that since I have been present for all days but 2 days down there at City Hall, I want to make it very clear that there's a giving heart, and I wanted this to be known for the donors that bring it to us too. That we're very grateful for the citizens of Bellingham for supporting these citizens, and when somebody comes to us and says, I need a tent and I need a sleeping bag, they get it, and that's theirs. They don't have to camp there, and there's nobody being kept there. I've never heard of any such thing. Somebody would have had to search really hard to find a statement like that, I'm guessing. So, because everybody there I'm getting worn out from people thanking me, and that's great. But I'm just so thankful to Bellingham. Bellingham has the answer. Please work with us all. Let's do this. Thanks.
Councilmember Lillquist.
Thanks, Barry. I just wanted to clear up what I think might be an important misunderstanding either by the public or by myself. It has to do with, I think, the implication that there are people who are homeless who should be quarantining and are not able to. We got an update earlier that indicated that everyone who was potentially exposed to the individuals who had tested positive for COVID were quarantining safely at the Byron Street facility. I want to make sure that's true. Is there anybody the health department thinks should be quarantining who isn't quarantining because they don't have a safe place to quarantine?
And Beck.
So the folks that are currently at Byron are people who have tested positive, and our case contact investigation is working with them to find out if there are additional people that are going to need that. So we're asking folks for now, because of the camp and the nature of it, to just quarantine. If you don't have symptoms, quarantine in place. If symptoms do develop, then they're able to work with our nurse consult line and get folks over to that facility that was set up specifically for people who don't have a safe place to recover. But that's kind of where it's at with things. So everybody that we know of that we can contact, we have contacted, and now we're continuing to dive into it. It's a puzzle as far as numbers go, and there's a whole lot of them in our county overall. And I just wanted a quick note to let you know, I believe the numbers at base camp that were tested on Tuesday, there were 45 folks that opted to test. And on Wednesday at City Hall, there were 30, I think I lost, 34, I think, that tested there, 32. And so this was open to all the folks to test, and those were the folks that were able to come in and get tested.
Thank you, Ann. And my understanding too was that effort, there was the lab had promise to expedite those results?
That part I don't know because I didn't do the testing part, so I don't know. And that's done by our testing coordinator, so I don't know what those conversations were. But I know this is a priority, this group, especially when there's known potential exposures in a congregate setting. We, it's much like our skilled nursing facilities. We put kind of priorities on getting test results back so we can get to people quickly. So I would imagine that was the case, but I can't say for sure.
Okay.
Barry?
Yes.
If I may, this is what I suspect many of us got this, but this was the communication that just came out from the health director that we just received in the last, I don't know, recently. As it relates to quarantine in the library lawn, it reads, campers should use the Bellingham Public Library lawn as a dedicated quarantine site for any people who are known to be a close contact of a confirmed case, but do not have symptoms of COVID-19. People with symptoms should call, or as some of the people expressed, what about people that don't have a telephone? Seek to find somebody with a telephone, if they can, to speak with a public health nurse who can refer them for testing and relocation to the Byron Street Isolation and Quarantine Facility.
Thanks, Seth.
Yeah.
Marcus.
Yeah, of course, using me as a point of contact has been somewhat of a practice, and I'm glad to serve in that capacity. Of course, there's others too, and you have their contacts as well, and I encourage you to all let us know what you can know with as much information as you can know. I'm speaking a little out of turn, but I'm not going to say numbers. I have heard that there are tests back for the City Hall camp, and that was so that came back promptly, while for some reason the base camp numbers are 24 hours behind or more now. So we're waiting to hear from that. That's at least those numbers are something that I'm privy to being able to hear, and I'm not going to pronounce them here, but I just want to pronounce that we're still waiting for that, everybody, and I want to know. So don't you too? Yes, we do. Okay. And the library thing, we're gonna, I'm part of that group down there trying to help, and so I'm going to see what I can do. And this is a challenge, guys. And so if you could see what you could do, that would be great. Thank you. Contact me.
Joel, real quick, I have to get out of here. So
yeah, I just wanted to, one thing I forgot to say is I just wanted to echo what Emily said is if we can possibly back to the Pallet versus 360 modular, if we can possibly get both, I think that would be ideal. So I just wanted to say that. I forgot to say that earlier.
Okay, thanks everybody. We'll see you in 2 weeks. We are adjourned.
Thanks, Barry.
The recording has stopped.